Good afternoon, everybody. It's Lorraine Alternative Homesteading on May 9, 2025, and I received an email from a subscriber, and it's a topic that she's somewhat been ruminating on, and she decided to place it into words, so I'm going to read it to you. And you all know her as CP on my channel. She's provided testimony in the past about her property and stuff. So here we go. This speaks about how and who these perps will choose and or use for gain. Thanks for reading this. If you read and all you have read, yes, the word needs to get out as to who and what and the lengths the perpetrators will go to. This is the testimony, and I'll try to make it short. I want to give you an example of the type of people who perpetrate these crimes, those who are not law enforcement, and who and what type of person they can control. So here it goes. I was on the phone yesterday with a friend discussing a matter of auto accidents. I said, quote, "It makes me think of Danielle D." And she says, the person she's speaking to says, "How do you know her?" I said, "She lived with Scott in the attached house in 2003. She knew her in high school, a 2-year gap, sophomore, and my friend was a senior. Danielle was in an auto accident in the 11th grade. She was a model, etc. She wound up in the popular crowd. Then the auto accident occurs. Her boyfriend is unalived in the crash, and she loses her leg. She's still in the 11th grade. All of 17 years old. This is a very serious trauma for a young girl. So she loses her boyfriend. She's in an accident, loses her leg. From that point on, she lived her life as a person with as much trauma would. Trying to gain self-esteem, she is, quote unquote, picked out by the local gang, the local motorcycle gang. She is fed with drugs and everything else. My friend told me stories about her in high school, with her now she's ragged and having needle marks up and down her arms after the loss of her boyfriend and her leg. She was probably, I'm just going to add, she was probably trying to anesthetize the pain, the trauma, etc. Danielle lived next door to me with Scott, the meth maker for the Warlocks, quote unquote, motorcycle gang. I knew her when she had her leg mainly healed and had a prosthetic. She was still on drugs, though. Lots of hallucinogenics at this point. These dirtbag gang members prey on victims of trauma. She writes this in big bold print. They promised her, quote unquote, inclusive friendship. They'll stick by her even though others left her side. Oh, and that's a ruse, of course, I'm adding. And they did just that. She was used to be a surrogate to the meth cook she lived with, to stay out of prison for another 9 months before heading to serve his sentence from my favorite Bureau of Investigation bust. He provided her with shelter, drugs, and a constant flow of people, to include his wife, his kids, so she'd have friends that, quote unquote, cared. Her reply to my friend telling her, quote unquote, just stay true to yourself with these people around you, unquote. They were not high school friends at this point. They were gang members now. So Danielle replied, well, at least they're still with me. Saying essentially, quote, I don't like them and this lifestyle, but this crowd hasn't left me, unquote. So let's fast forward 10 years. I lived attached to her, as I mentioned. She gave birth to a baby. It was not the meth cook's baby. She carried this child in utero, all the while ingesting drug after drug after drug, and they used her to allow him time to get the jail and the gang ready for his arrival, and to be able to smuggle drugs into prison with the BABY that Daniel was a surrogate for. You hear that? She was a surrogate for. She didn't know she was being a surrogate. She thought she was just having a baby. This is a perfect example of what these people do. How they stop at nothing. How they care of nothing and no one but themselves. This was a young, beautiful 17-year-old. She was used and abused last that she saw her. She was seeking a job and hoping her son would be able to get into the military. Snakes walk amongst us day in and day out. Be mindful, very mindful, of who you let help you. And I include myself in that, she says. Well, thank you so much, CP. I appreciate it. I'm sure the subscribers will appreciate it, and feel free to share this story. Add your own story. Please leave a comment down below. What extent will your perpetrators go through to get what they want from you? I've left a lot of evidence on my channel, some of which I can't leave because they too will take it down. Like cutting an inch-long triangle in my forearm on May Day, their High Witch holiday. Yeah. Burning the hole in Bandit the rooster, whose photo is there as a thumbnail. They burned that same hole in the cheek of Chicklet, the same hole in the side of a cat named Cheeks, who just suddenly disappeared. And also they burned the same hole in the side of a dog that was roaming around the county road because his owner passed away. And my neighbor diagonally across ended up taking care of him, and he had that hole in his side. He ended up, passing away, the poor dog. But that's 4 animals that I know of that were tortured with an energy weapon of sorts, burning a hole in them. These perps will do anything for money. They're psychopaths. They're malignant narcissists. They don't care. They have no empathy, no compassion, no remorse. That's why I call them inhuman. They do not possess the qualities and the traits that would consider them to be human. That would be kindness and understanding and forgiveness and love and compassion, empathy. Being able to iron out differences, have a conversation. And I will be discussing that in another video, because I do have another topic that I would like to discuss. It is called stonewalling. I have discussed it previously on my channel about a year or so ago. But it's a psychologically abusive tactic, sort of like gaslighting and the silent treatment and stuff like that. But it becomes a very insidious and dangerous when you're attempting to acquire information from people in positions of authority that you're entitled to, and that people in a position of authority are stonewalling or gaslighting you. And that happens not only to targeted people, by the way. It happens to a lot of people in society throughout the United States, and it's quite unfortunate. But particularly with targeted people, and particularly like in my circumstances and yours. But leave a comment down below. I hope everybody's doing well. And I will post probably another video later today. I have a lot of stuff to catch up on. And I've got letter writing to do, and I've got to contact Hewlett-Packard HP support. See what kind of support they can give me and get me a new printer. I'll talk to you guys soon.